the government, the PMO very quickly started saying, we are not a public authority. The PM Cares is not a public authority, they said, and they said that this is a private fund. Now, that means that when you want to collect money, you will say, we are a public authority. When you want to give information, or rather not give information, you very quickly say, we are not a public authority. Audit is happening. Why are you worried? Now what we are seeing very clearly is that the last 2 years, the audited statement is not being put up on the website. Why? Is it that the audit is not even being done now? Or is it that the audit is being done, but the report is not going to be shared with the public? The possibility of quid pro quo, the possibility of extortion, the possibility of regulatory inaction that we saw in electoral bonds is all possible here, because this is exactly the same in terms of the possibilities as the instrument of electoral bonds. Now, why did we call electoral bonds the mother of all scams? Because we were saying that although the electoral bonds, the funds, the amount was only 16,500 crore, but the corruption scandal was worth billions of rupees. Now, here it's the same thing. So far, from the audited accounts, the information that we have is that more than 23,000 crore rupees were given to the PM Cares Fund in the first 3 years itself. So you can only imagine that if a fund like this is used for quid pro quo, which it could be, I'm not saying it has been, but there is a clear possibility, just like the electoral bonds, that it could be. If it is used for extortion, if it is used for regulatory inaction, quid pro quo, then we have possibly an even larger scam than electoral bonds on our hands. We are going into election after election. We have a situation where this fund continues to be a black hole, where behind a veil of secrecy, money is getting collected at a very large scale, and we don't know where that money is going, who is giving that money. So I think that
this is, and you feel that this is one of the biggest scams, in fact, bigger than the electoral bond?
I think that this is a huge, huge scam. The fact that the information is being withheld itself, to me, is scandalous.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. I think many of you must have forgotten about the PM Cares Fund, which was introduced during the COVID times in the name of emergency. It's 2024. 4 years later, people are still struggling to find out those kind of details as to who has donated the money for the PM Cares Fund, who are the beneficiaries, who has got help from the government. And it raises a lot of speculation because everything looks like a dark secret. And that is why I thought that in the middle of elections, it's important to talk about this issue, because time and again, corruption is being talked about. And parties are raising fingers at each other on corruption. But what about this corruption which exists and which has been hidden away in the dark corners of the PMO, that is the Prime Minister's office? If you look at one of the tweets, a very recent tweet by transparency activist and lawyer Lokesh Batra, and Lokesh Batra pointed out that till date, now 2020 was the year when the PM Cares Fund was introduced, and till date, if you look at the PM Cares Fund portal, it continues to display the audited statements only up to 2021 and 2022, which means that for 2023 and 2024, the auditing is missing. And this is a very important link, which raises the question that is this PM Cares Fund, one of the dark secrets of Prime Minister's office, which needs to be unraveled, just like the electoral bonds. Joining me now is the renowned transparency activist Anjali Bhardwaj this evening with us. Thank you so much, Anjali, for joining. And the first question, what Lokesh Batra has pointed out, that the last audited the statement which we see is from 2021 and 2022. Now, how worrying is this aspect, and of which nobody is discussing? People have forgotten about it, this PM Cares Fund. Is this like a black hole which now needs to be unraveled, just like the electoral bonds?
Yes, Neelu, I think it's a very, very important issue, because this is something that has great public interest. Look, the PM Cares was set up with the objective of helping people at the time of distress, in the time of an emergency, whether it is a health emergency like COVID or due to a natural disaster. So now when a fund like this is set up, naturally the assumption is that the money that is collected and how it is used would be known to everyone. This is public money. In any democracy, people have a right to know what funds are being collected, how their money is being disbursed. It's a basic constitutional fundamental right, the right to information. Now, what has happened? The Prime Minister, under his chairmanship, in an ex officio capacity, set up a trust. And the trust was called the PM Cares Fund. The trust has as its trustees 3 senior union cabinet ministers, again in their ex officio capacity. So we are talking about amongst the top 4 politicians, the top 4 ministers in our country, in our cabinet, being on a trust. How can this be a private trust? How can this be not be a public authority? That's the first question. The PM Cares was set up with the objective of ensuring that if there is a disaster, people can be helped. Why should information about where the money is coming from and who is receiving the help be kept away from people? Why should there be a veil of secrecy when information about this fund is sought? Now, let us understand how this worked out, the chronology, if we can call that. 28th of March 2020 is when the fund was set up. This was 4 days before the financial year ended. The 2020 financial year ended in the year 2020. 4 days before the 31st of March, this fund was set up. Within 4 days, the PM Cares Fund received over 3,000 crore rupees. That's a huge sum of money for any fund to receive within 4 days. And a lot of that money came from CSR funds, the Corporate Social Responsibility Funds. If one looks at the Companies Act, who can get CSR funds? It is very, very clear. It said that only the PM Relief Fund could get it, or any organization or body that was set up by the central government could get these funds. And the Ministry of Corporate Affairs put out a notification telling everybody, all the PSUs and corporates, that you can give CSR funds to the PM Cares Fund, which basically meant that they said that this is a central government set up body, which means it is covered under the RTI Act as well. So when the fund was set up, money was to be collected. It was clearly shown and declared that this was a public authority. When people started asking for information on where the money was coming from, where the money was going, the government, the PMO very quickly started saying, we are not a public authority. The PM Cares is not a public authority, they said, and they said that this is a private fund. Now, that means that when you want to collect money, you will say, we are a public authority. When you want to give information, or rather not give information, you very quickly say, we are not a public authority. And how did they do that? They retrospectively amended the Companies Act, because the Companies Act, the Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, was amended 2 months after the PM CARES came in, to retrospectively say that in addition to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund and central government set up bodies, the PM CARES can also receive funds. So now just look at this. The government basically is now trying to hide behind this clause to say that, look, it's not a public authority. It was not set up by the central government. It got money. We are not going to give you information. The only thing we were told is you don't have to worry as citizens. When we asked for information, people were told that audit is happening. Why are you worried? Now what we are seeing very clearly is that the last 2 years, the audited statement is not being put up on the website. Why? Is it that the audit is not even being done now? Or is it that the audit is being done, but the report is not going to be shared with the public? So I think what we are seeing is a very, very concerning trend, very parallel to the electoral bond situation, where the government, the Prime Minister, when was asked very clearly that give us the information, what is there to hide in the electoral bonds, how people are funding, who is funding political parties, where they are spending these funds. That information, what we were told, it's not going to be covered under the RTI Act. Now, that is exactly what has been done with PM CARES, and it raises very, very serious questions.
It does raise very serious questions, but do you think that this is also a gross violation of laws by the PMO, and who would be accountable? Is it going to be the Ministry of Finance? Is it going to be the PMO directly? How is the accountability going to be held in this aspect?
Look, Neelu, this violates our fundamental right to know. If you recall, under the judgment which was delivered, the landmark judgment which was delivered by the Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court on the electoral bonds matter, the court had held that the right to information is a fundamental right of citizens, and if the right to information is violated, Article 19 of the Constitution, which guarantees us the right to free speech and expression, is violated. So this is a violation because people have a right to know in a democracy how funds are collected and where the funds are being spent in their name. And here, if any court were to hear this matter carefully and were to pass a judgment, I will be very surprised if they don't arrive at the same conclusion that they did with electoral bonds. Now, what was happening with electoral bonds? When the judgment was finally written, the judgment clearly says that why is it important that people have this information? Because the court said that there is a possibility of a quid pro quo. What happens is that if a company, let's say, wants to get a favor from the government, they can give money to the government behind closed doors, behind a veil of secrecy, and get a favor from the government. Now, that is the exact same possibility that arises in the PM CARES fund as well, where it is perfectly possible that a company gives money to the PM CARES fund and then the government gives that company a big contract, or the government says we will not act against you despite there being some prima facie evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the company. So all sorts of possibilities that existed in the electoral bonds case exist here as well. The possibility of quid pro quo, the possibility of extortion, the possibility of regulatory inaction that we saw in electoral bonds is all possible here, because this is exactly the same in terms of the possibilities as the instrument of electoral bonds, where you give money and you get a favor in return. So we are talking about the Prime Minister sitting as the chairperson of this trust. I think it's squarely the responsibility, therefore, of the Prime Minister to make sure that the fund that he's running is run transparently, to make sure that when he's sitting in an ex officio capacity, Neelu, he's not sitting in his private capacity. the ministers who are sitting in an ex officio capacity, they are not sitting in a private capacity. It is not that Mr. Narendra Modi, after he ceases to be prime minister, will still be the chairperson. So if the prime minister of our country is the chairperson of the fund, how can we accept the fact that this fund is a private fund? And then to say that money is going to be collected as if it was set up by the central government and it was a private authority, then how can the government deny us information? How can the government, after collecting money, say, no, now we are not a public authority? This is absolute impunity. And I think that it's a fit case for the Supreme Court to hold a hearings and to declare this to be a public authority. This has known to be done in the past for many bodies which tried to evade transparency and accountability. And I really think that when we said in the Electoral Bonds case that the judgment was fantastic, but it came too late. I hope that in the PM Cares case now, there are several petitions in the courts that the courts act with some sense of urgency, because this is not a matter that should be taken lightly. There is a huge ramification to the lack of transparency that exists, and there could be lives at stake. Why do I say that? In Maharashtra, in Aurangabad district, there were ventilators during COVID that were given from the PM Cares Fund because the ventilators carried the sticker on them which said PM Cares. Now, these ventilators were malfunctioning. It caused the deaths of many people, many patients. When the matter went up to the Aurangabad court, the court asked for documents and the court was told that this is a private entity. The documents were not provided and the stickers were removed from the ventilators and they were told, no, this didn't come from the PM Cares. Look how lack of transparency can lead to evasion of accountability. People are dying. People died because of faulty ventilators which carried the sticker of PM Cares. But when people asked for information under the RTI Act, when the courts are asking, the citizens of the country are being told that this is not a public authority, this is a private body, therefore we can't give you information. Now, this is very, very problematic. One can't have these instruments running with prime ministers of democracies. We are saying we are the largest democracy in the world. You can't have the prime minister of a largest democracy or any democracy sitting as a chair in an ex officio capacity of a trust and saying that I'm not going to give you information. How is this even possible, and how is this acceptable in a democratic framework? That is the question that Mr. Modi has to answer. And I think that if the Prime Minister even today recognizes that this is so undemocratic, this is so incorrect, it has such huge ramifications for our democracy, he should immediately make the information available. What are people asking for? People are saying that you have set up a fund to give us, ostensibly give us, the people of India, certain facilities when we need them in an emergency. What is there to hide? What does the government want to hide? What does the PMO want to hide? What does the Prime Minister want to hide?
No, but Anjali, what I fail to understand, I don't know when the courts will take up this matter, and we've all been waiting that when they will take up the PM Cares Fund. But there doesn't seem to be enough pressure coming in from the political parties as well. I'm talking about the opposition. It doesn't talk too much about the PM Cares Fund. What is the reason? I mean, there was pressure as far as the electoral bonds was concerned, but what about PM Cares Fund? It seems that even the opposition has forgotten this.
I think it's very unfortunate, Neelu, and you're absolutely right. In a democracy, in a multi-party democracy, we are not hearing any political party take up this issue. I mean, this should be a matter that should be taken up in the parliament, that should be debated, there should be a discussion, there should be pressure built. But clearly political parties are failing us as citizens. And as citizens, as concerned people of the country, there are many people who have been raising these questions. There are people who've been filing any number of RTI requests to ask for this information, hitting there is stonewalling, clearly that's happening, but people are asking this information at great risk to themselves also. But we are seeing a complete silence from political parties. I would say that why should a BJP also not ask its leaders to make this information public? By the Bharatiya Janata Party came to power on the plank of anti-corruption. This is a clear instrument which can facilitate the largest scale corruption. What did we see in electoral bonds, Neelu? Electoral bonds of only 16,500 crore rupees were transacted. But in return, there were billions of rupees worth contracts that were given out. Now, why did we call electoral bonds the mother of all scams? Because we were saying that although the electoral bonds, the funds, the amount was only 16,500 crore, but the corruption scandal was worth billions of rupees. Now, here, it's the same thing. So far from the audited accounts, the information that we have is that more than 23,000 crore rupees were given to the PM CARES fund in the first 3 years itself. The last 2 years information is not even available. So we can clearly assume that it's much more than the electoral bond funds. This PM CARES funds is much more than what the electoral bonds that were given were. So you can only imagine that if a fund like this is used for quid pro quo, which it could be, I'm not saying it has been, but there is a clear possibility, just like the electoral bonds, that it could be. If it is used for extortion, if it is used for regulatory inaction, quid pro quo, then we have possibly an even larger scam than electoral bonds on our hands. And I think that it's urgent that the courts of the country intervene, the courts hear this matter, and I think it's very important. I mean, look, if opposition parties don't want to take this up, it's their, I think it's their decision. But as citizens, as the media, I think it's very important that we keep the pressure on. I'm really glad that you have chosen to do this debate today, because this topic needs to be debated. We need to have a discussion on this, and people need to understand that these kind of funds, these kind of instruments have no place in a democracy. How can we say, look, we don't know whether somebody is giving money to the PM CARES fund and, influencing several other processes. What do elections mean in a context like this? So we have to understand that if we value democracy, we value free and fair elections, we value the fact that we have certain constitutional fundamental rights, we have to speak up. And it's very important that this particular fund be struck down. And I really hope that the courts listen, they do a hearing quickly, and they don't keep this languishing. This is not a matter that should be taken, lightly by the judiciary.
Anjali, for the viewers' knowledge sake, if I may ask you, how many petitions are there which are pending on PM CARES fund? And it's like how many years since the court has not taken up this matter?
Look, the PM CARES fund was set up in March 2020. So it was set up on the 28th of March 2020. PM CARES started accepting funds. They ostensibly started giving funds. One of the things that we were told during the whole pandemic, when it was at its peak, was that the PM CARES fund had given 1,000 crore rupees for the welfare of migrant workers. Where has this money gone? We asked under the RTI Act to various ministries, relevant ministries, that please tell us, where did that 1,000 crore rupees go? Which state government did you give it to? What happened to it? No information. All that they say is that this is not a public authority. So people have been filing RTI applications, approaching information commissions, approaching the courts since 2020. Unfortunately, these matters, even when they have come up for hearing, there's been no conclusion. There's been no judgment that has come so far. The matter has not been, the PM Cares Fund has not been struck down. Like you said, we are nearing the end of 2024. It's been 4 years. It's a very long time. We are going into election after election. We have a situation where this fund continues to be a black hole, where behind a veil of secrecy, money is getting collected at a very large scale, and we don't know where that money is going, who is giving that money. I mean, in between, there are concerns that some Chinese firms might be giving the money. There are concerns that some other firms. I mean, we need to know, why should people be left to guess all of this in a democracy? I mean, are we a democracy or not? This is not an unreasonable demand to make from citizens, that please tell us, you've set up a fund. A lot of people, I remember when the PM Cares Fund was set up, Neelu, said that where is the need for a new fund? But there were many who said that it's all right. You know, if the Prime Minister feels, if the government feels a new fund is required, that's okay. But it's not okay to not be transparent. You cannot set up funds like this, instruments like this, and not be transparent. It completely diminishes public trust. This kind of lack of transparency is totally diminishing public trust in the Prime Minister's office, in the manner in which the Prime Minister is functioning in this trust. And I think that it's very, very critical that there must be immediate corrective action. In the electoral bonds case, the court did not simply strike down electoral bonds, Neelu. It also said that retrospectively give information. Tell us how much money was given by whom and to which party. I think in this particular case, the court must ask for full disclosure also. The court must say that give details of every penny, because that's what we need in a democracy. When we say...
What you're saying and what you're mentioning is very, very significant. But the point is that the way the government has been exposed in the electoral bonds case, and of course, the courts helped the entire system in not reaching to a logical conclusion, because the inquiry wasn't instituted. Nobody will be able to know, and the case is almost over now. So similarly, do you think that the government will really open up on its secrets as far as the PM Cares Fund is concerned, after having burnt its hands with the electoral bond case?
So, Neelu, let me put it this way. If the government had its way, we would not know today who gave electoral bonds and to whom. And although the court refused to set up an independent inquiry, an SIT, the court has said that wherever it is clear in the electoral bonds that there is corruption, that can be agitated and can finally come to the courts. So I would say very strongly that two things did happen in the electoral bonds case. One is, at least you and I and the whole country today knows who got the money, from whom, and how much. The second thing that we all know is that in what proximity did a company give money to the ruling party and get a contract in return worth billions of rupees. So we have information today, at least that is there for everyone to see and make up their mind. And I think that the whole facade that was created of absolutely no corruption, total, clean hands, that was, at least the mirror was cracked. Now, I think that what we need to do here is that the PM Cares Fund, likewise, the court has to take the first step first. The court has to declare this to be a public authority, and the court must, and I hope they do, uphold our right to information. And just like the electoral bonds case, say that there is no reason why this information should not be put in the public domain. Once you, I, the media, the citizens of the country get to know which company was giving money to which to the PM Cares Fund, which is really a fund which is being controlled by the Prime Minister and the ruling party ministers, there will be a lot of things that will become clear. Quid pro quo, if there is any, will become clear. It will become clear if there is any extortion that's happening, any regulatory inaction that's happening, it will become clear. And I think that is always the first step towards accountability. And of course, in the electoral bonds matter, I don't think the matter is closed. I think there are people, and I'm very certain there are cases that are being looked into. People will file complaints on the basis of the information that has come out, which will eventually again reach the courts, including the Supreme Court of the country. And we have to keep hope that there will be accountability even on that front. But certainly there was a lot of accountability, which I hope to see in the PM Cares, because like I said, this is akin to the electoral bonds instrument. Just like the electoral bonds could be misused for quid pro quo, this has the same potential to be misused by the ruling party of our country at the center to do quid pro quo and to also do other kinds of wrongdoing potentially. And the information should be in the public domain. I would say that if the Prime Minister has nothing to hide, if this government has nothing to hide, they should come forward. They should not wait for a judgment by the Supreme Court to give this information. There is no reason, if there is no wrongdoing, to withhold this information from people.
One last question, Anjali, before I wind up the interview, that is this one of the darkest secrets of Prime Minister's office? And if at all they are nabbed, they are caught in the wrong, their wrongdoings are caught, who do you think is going to be held responsible? Will it be Prime Minister? Will it be the Finance Minister? Where will the buck stop here in this particular case?
Well, I think it's quite clear, Neelu, that this has been set up as a trust. The trust has, as the chairperson, the Prime Minister of the country, and in his ex officio capacity. There are ministers who are on the board of the trust. They are trustees. So, I mean, if we find that there is some wrongdoing that's happening, of course there will be accountable. How can the chairperson of the trust, if the trust is found to be doing something wrong, not be accountable, not be the person who's answerable? How can the trustees, the ministers who are sitting there, not be held accountable and answerable? So I think it's quite clear. It, of course, will depend on what comes out if there is wrongdoing, if there is information that's put out and we get to know that the people in the government or other agencies were complicit. That's very different. But as far as the trust is concerned, the buck stops with the chairperson, who happens to be the Prime Minister of our country. So I think that it's quite clear that the accountability finally rests with the board of the trust, which at the moment is claiming to be a private body, a private trust, but there is really absolutely no logical reason to say that this is a private body. And it has to be a public authority. It has collected money saying that it's a public authority, and it has no business today turn around and tell the citizens of this country, we will not give you information, we will not be accountable, we are a private body. So I think that
and you feel that this is one of the biggest scams, in fact, bigger than the electoral bond?
I think that this is a huge, huge scam. The fact that the information is being withheld itself, to me, is scandalous. But in terms of a scam, only data can tell us what is happening. If we don't have information, people lose public trust. How large the scam is, how large the corruption is, can only come to light, be known once information is out in the public domain. I cannot say whether it will be smaller or larger than electoral bonds, but like I said, it is scandalous that information is not being provided in our democracy. Whether it is a scam and how big the scam is, only time will tell when we know the information. And I hope very much, for the sake of our democracy, that we get to know soon.
Thank you so much, Anjali, for joining on such an important issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay ahead with our cutting edge news app. Instantly access the latest shorts in just 1 minute and breaking news in just 50 words. Download now for a smarter, faster news experience.